Hi, I'm Mark Lowndy. Along with Mark Hertzberg, I'm one of the authors of the Photo Bill of Rights resolutions that you'll be considering at the board meeting. I'll talk more about that in a minute, but I think it's more important that I tell you about me so you can better understand where I'm coming from. I promise this will all make sense if you stay with me for the next few minutes. I was the personal photographer for Los Angeles Mayor Tom Bradley before interning at the LA Times. I was a stringer and later a staffer for both UPI and the AP. I worked for several dailies in Southern California, most recently as the photo assignment editor and digital imaging specialist for the newspaper group that includes the Pasadena Star-News. I transitioned to what we now call social media, working with both GeoCities and Yahoo, finishing there as a writer, audio tech, and floor director for Yahoo Finance Vision. For about 10 years, I worked in freelance video production. I'm currently working as an instructional technology specialist in the Cupertino Union School District. But it's even more important to tell you who I am not. I am not that guy who clings to the past whining that that's the way we've always done it. In every one of my several careers, I fought to change things to operate better than before, often tussling with those butt-waddy folks. I push for photographers to be given equal status in newsroom culture by changing assignment forms into photo request forms, giving the final coverage decision to the photo department rather than a staff reporter. I created an online digital newspaper prototype which terrified the butt-waddy executives at my newspaper chain. I was one of the people who brought the NPPA online via CompuServe, AOL, and Genie, and was the supervising founder of NPPAL. I hand-coded the first NPPA website. At GeoCities and Yahoo, I was part of the team that helped develop online community, what we now call social media. I developed practices for on-air news anchors to engage with the public when that was unheard of. I introduced maker education and founded the first makerspace in my school district. I present about it to educators around my state. Early in my career, I recognized that the traditional concept of staff photographer was fading away. Life and Look magazines had folded, and magazine after magazine laid off its photographers and started using freelancer material. Newspaper staff stopped growing and then started shrinking. I realized that, with few exceptions, the industry's center of gravity was now freelancers. Many staffers, now ejected from their comfy employment cocoons, were clueless about operating a business. Their poor business practices were dragging the entire profession down. We desperately needed business education. I wrote and posted hundreds of pieces about photo business issues. In 2002, news photographer editor Jim Gordon asked me to write a monthly business practices column, something I continued for 14 years and nearly 150 columns. During these years, the NPPA board resisted addressing business practices, and it took a couple of tries to convince the board to change the bylaws to allow the organization to actively address freelancer concerns and to create a business practices committee. I'm telling you all this because I'm not some stereotypical old guy who resists change and longs for the good old days. Heck, I even stopped using the word subject when referring to the people that we photograph. Although I am a privileged white guy, I'm not one with no empathy or insight into the lives of those without privilege. The families in my school are primarily people of color. They speak more than 40 languages at home. Many of the kids get free or reduced price lunches, so-called Title I students. Many of our families are no doubt undocumented. I work next to 2 classrooms of moderate to severe autistic students, and I'm constantly looking for ways to support those kiddos. I work to support the interests of the most vulnerable members of our society every single day. When I saw the Photo Bill of Rights, I literally pumped my fist and said, yes! I immediately added my name as a signature, but soon I learned that it contained a fatal flaw. The NPPA is not a photographer's organization. It is a visual journalism organization. We fought for generations to be seen as journalists, not just button-pushing my photographers. As journalists, we have interests that are different from other workers who might happen to use cameras. As part of the profession that is tasked with comforting the afflicted and afflicting the comfortable, it is literally our job to take pictures where we are not wanted. It is critical that the decision of where we work not only belongs wholly to us, but is perceived as such by the public. One of the criticisms of these resolutions is that they represent an extreme perspective of the Photo Bill of Rights. This is not so. With the exception of a single passage, I think that the authors did vital, long needed work. These are things that I've been pulling for decades. But that one section speaks so fundamentally to our ability to work as journalists that it cannot stand. I get that it is not a law and that it is not part of the main body of the document. But the fact is that such applicable situations are vanishingly rare. Deliberately bringing it into a document that will be perceived wrongly by many people as a professional rule book for photographers will create access and safety problems that we have fought against for many decades. Implied consent to be photographed in public spaces is among the most sensitive and valuable legal doctrines underpinning our profession. Considering it as an equivocal concept is the first step to a situation that would have journalists self-censoring rather than expose themselves to physical, critical, or potentially legal risk. People who participate in public demonstrations have already made a conscious decision to be visible in public. In most cases, they are being photographed and shared on social media, often without their knowledge. This doesn't even take into account the surveillance cameras that blanket most cities and businesses. Singling out journalists for special behavior is dangerously wrong. Not all lens-based workers even are journalists. Some are activists working with the groups they're photographing. Others are fine artists or work for production companies. They do not have the same interests as journalists, who should not be included under this too broad umbrella. Other critics say that the resolution argues incrementalism. Well, indeed it does. The photojournalism profession has fallen into its current state incrementally, and yet the resulting challenges are quite real. The time to stop creeping rot is at the beginning. None of this is to say that journalists should not be empathetic with the people whom they photograph. That's the good part of the Photo Bill of Rights. If the document cannot be modified to eliminate the problem language, that one small part, the NPPA must part ways with it and create its own similar principles. To that end, we've submitted a companion resolution that causes such a document to be created. Look, I understand that when somebody puts a lot of work into something that they rightly feel a strong sense of ownership. It's human nature to be defensive of criticism. The authors of the Photo Bill of Rights have had more than a year to go beyond the bill to address this issue. The NPPA should not go along with this indefinite timeline, which might not even result in the needed changes. Don't be distracted by rhetoric about the merits of the Photo Bill of Rights. It's not about that. It's solely about that single yet vitally important passage. This is not about either or. We can and must have both, even if we have to independently write our own. Thank you for your time.